O for a muse of fire. The brightest heavens of invention. A platform for a stage. Interviews to conduct and hosts to behold the swelling scene. Then should a love like Joe, like himself, assume the port of news, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should recording, editing, and broadcasting crouch for employment. But pardon and gentles all, the full raised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth such an object. The vasty fields of Indies, or may we cram within this electronic box the very cast that did affright the air of the World Wide Web. Carry them here and there, jumping all times, turning the accomplishments of many years into an hourglass, for which supply admit me chorus to this history, who prologue like your humble patience pray. Gently to hear, kindly to judge. Our show.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of GoIndieNow. I'm so glad you could join us. This month we're going to be pulling back the curtain and going behind the scenes with those who offer tools that can help indies utilize all the services available to them and get their art out. So with that being said, our first guest today is Paul Stefano. He is a producer and narrator for ACX. ACX is a subsidiary company of Amazon. It helps indies get their audiobooks made and out there to the world.
Oh, yeah. You will know, that it is time, to turn the page when you hear the chimes ring like this. Dang it!
Start, Paul, by going over your background. Tell us how you got started.
Well, I got into, I guess you could say, the field way back in high school. I was one of those people that people always told, hey, you have a great voice, you should go into radio, you should go into television. And I said, okay. Well, what did I know? I was 15 years old, 16 years old, so I thought I'd give it a try. I started out by doing the announcements at my high school, announcing what they were having for lunch that day or what the score was of the high school basketball game. It was right around that time where my voice started to change. So I got known for being that guy whose voice would crack on the air. That would say, hey, the Spartans won today 35-32. And that would happen at least once a week. So I got kind of famous in my local high school for being the voice cracking guy on the announcements. So then I went to college and tried to pursue that a little bit further in undergrad. I got a degree in broadcast journalism, and I thought I would be a radio DJ or the local television reporter. While I was in school, I did the radio station and the television station for the campus. I thought, okay, this is it. So I graduated, went out and started sending my tapes to people. I actually had tapes that I made. It's even before CDs. And I would send those out to people, the local radio stations, TV stations, and say, hey, hire me for a job. Didn't really happen. And as often does happen, life got in the way. I needed a real job, so I did that. And I worked in various corporate entities for the last 20 years. And then over the last couple of years, I decided I wanted to look back into it and decided that I was going to try and make a go of it by doing audiobooks and other voiceovers. So just in the last year and a half to 2 years, I decided I was going to go back into it as hard as I could and try and make a go of it. So that's what's brought me to where I am today.
Why audiobooks? Why did you choose to do audiobooks?
Well, initially, it's because I thought my voice lended itself well to them. I also think that my voice is good at doing narration. And secondly, because of ACX, I learned about audiobooks through Audible and ACX and started to investigate how people actually did it, because I thought to myself, I like the way that person reads that book, or I like the way she sounds on that narration. I think maybe I could do that. And I looked into all the materials I have on ACX and found out that, in fact, I probably could set it up myself and start to try and look for work. And that's what initially drew me to the business the second time, was getting into audiobooks, because I thought it would be something I could start off with right away. And it turns out I was right.
Chapter 1. Oh my God, no, no, no! Now, Chuck, just calm down. Calm down? I wasn't going to calm down. No. Instead, I slammed the car door, charged up the lawn past my partner, Harry, and was halted by a brick wall of Los Angeles' finest. Most were fresh off their beat and dressed in their dark blues. There were also a couple detective colleagues in their suits and ties. But all were standing arm to arm, waiting to do whatever it took to stop me from getting into my house, my head wrung with terrible screams of high-pitched disbelief. The words, "No way, not my girls," echoed louder and louder, as if I was saying them before they could even reach my mouth. It's the last thing I remember about that day. I remember that day. The day I, Jack Casey, catapulted to a celebrity status. The day the public became enthralled with anything and everything about me. How could I forget it? It's the day that remains my defining moment, not just as a famous serial killer, but as a human being.
Talk about the process, how the process begins with audiobooks. What do you do specifically to start and go through the process of how you create what you create?
It's quite an involved process, where it takes probably more time than anybody would realize or is going to want to know after I'm done talking for the next couple of minutes. The first piece of the process is to go through the whole book and look for proper names or places that I don't know, things that I don't know how to pronounce, names of cities, character names, names of corporations. So I usually go through and make a list, and then I'll either ask the author if I have an open channel of communication with them, or a lot of times what I'll do is make a recording of myself doing the word. So there's a list of 10 names. I'll record those 10 names on a file and send it to the author and say, this is what it sounds like to me. Is this right? I actually did this with you, Joe, for Amongst the Killing. I sent the recording of how I thought the name sounded. Some were right, some were wrong, but that was a good way to start off the process. And then once I do that, I read through the whole book to get a feel for the story and the plot and the character development. And then finally, something I've just started learning from a coach who I'm working with named Sean Allen Pratt, fabulous coach and narrator himself with over 850 books to his name as a narrator. And he's taught me this method of going and finding the spine of the book. What that means is taking the book and, much like you would in a college class, in a lecture, highlight the important parts of the story. And it actually kind of reminds me of my son's homework. He's in second grade, and similar to what you do when you're first learning to read is, okay, find the subject of the sentence. Okay, what is the subject doing? What is the actionable part of the sentence? So I go through the whole book that way and say, okay, here's the pieces, and you're left with just basically a trail, or a spine as we call it, of what the story looks like. And at that point, you can start to get a feel for where the story goes, how the development is, and where you want to take it. And then finally is to sit down and record the book. So we read it through, edit all the mistakes, and send it off to ACX. I'm simplifying it a bit. My setup is inside a booth, and you can see the walls here are my Drum Perfect booth is the brand name, and it's a 3x4 cubicle basically that goes up to up to 6 feet high, or 6.5 feet high, and about 3x4.5 wide. It's a trapezoid. So what that does is helps cut down the outside noise, and also makes the sound inside the booth sound good, basically, for lack of a better term. It cuts down on reverberations and cuts down on any echoes. What you're looking for when you're recording any voice is what's called a flat sound. And these walls are actually padded in carpeting, and that helps to deaden the sound and give it a flat sound. I use 2 different microphones depending on the application. I have my Audio Technica AT35 microphone, and that's what I use primarily for audiobooks. This is the mic here, and the front of it is what's called a pop filter, and that just helps when you're talking into it to break up some of the hard sounds, the P's and the S's. And I also have up here a Audio Technica shotgun mic, which typically is used for film. Some of your listeners and viewers may know what that's used for. It's for on a set having dialogue and usually hung overhead so the actors can speak into the microphone. Then down here, I use a iPad with a remote connection to my Mac Mini, which is out here at the editing studio / table. And that is it's a 20-inch monitor that I edit on, makes it easier. But in the studio, the iPad is remote connected, a program called Splashtop that allows me to see what's happening on the computer outside. And the reason the computer is outside is because it makes a lot of noise. So again, you want to have a quiet sound when you're recording. You don't want to have lots of banging or echoes or any sort of extraneous sound. So the computer fan will be picked up by that microphone. It'll make all kinds of loud noises.
Talk about the standards of ACX. What kind of standards does ACX have, and how does one learn to stay within those standards?
Pretty strict, and it's on one hand hard to get going because you need to know those standards before you start. But on the other hand, it makes it kind of foolproof once you're able to hit those standards. So you have to make sure that the audio maintains a certain volume level, because you don't want to have a situation where the reader's listening or the listener's listening and they have to constantly adjust the knob on their dial because one part's too loud and one part's too soft. So you want to make sure that the volume is a consistent level. You have to edit out any mistakes, any breaths, any extraneous noise. So if I record at home and if my son decides to come in and say, "Hey, Daddy, when's dinner?" I have to edit that out when I'm doing the editing, or else it'll show up in the final file. ACX does do a quality control before the book is sent out to the marketing channels, but sometimes they miss stuff. I have a colleague who put out a book last week where an entire chapter was put through unedited because she named it Chapter 1 and the edited version was Chapter 1B or Chapter 1A. And she uploaded the wrong one. ACX missed it, and now that book is on Audible with the unedited chapter. And you know, we're professionals, but every once in a while we'll let something slip that we don't want everybody to hear. So you have to make sure that you edit that out before it gets to market. And the final step is to make sure that all the files are in the right order. So each chapter is recorded individually and uploaded that way to ACX, but it's up to the narrator and the producer, or narrator / producer, to make sure that it's in the right order. Because even though I name it Chapter 7, if I upload it in the wrong place, it'll get sent that way. So if I upload it second, it'll be Chapter 2, even though I've named it Chapter 7. So the standards are pretty strict, but you also have to make sure that you're on top of your game as a narrator and a producer.
So here's the big question, Paul. I know you consider yourself an indie, so I'm not going to ask you that. But what does being indie mean to you?
I guess it would be ready to do whatever it takes yourself to make whatever you want to happen in your life happen. So in my case, it's narrating books and being a voiceover artist. So I'm doing whatever it takes to on my end to make sure that happens. I currently have 9 titles completed. I have 7 released on ACX, and I'm working on 2 more that are going to be released in the next couple of weeks.
Along the lines of ACX, talk about how valuable a tool it is for authors and for people who are looking to get into the voiceover business.
Well, I think it's invaluable for both. For authors, I think it provides an avenue that, first, they may not know is there, and second, is a way that some authors may be able to get their work exposed to people that they otherwise would never be able to get exposed to. And I think that's great. And the same is actually kind of true for producers or narrators. Similar to my story, there are people out there that have skills that may like to read and think that they can make a career out of it. And ACX provides that platform, whereas before they may not have any opportunity to make their talents known.
My many thanks to Paul Stefano for that great interview. For those of you who didn't know, he's the narrator and producer of my book, Amongst the Killing. That's how we met. He's a great wealth of knowledge, and I encourage everybody to go to our website at GoIndieNow.com and check out all his links. And while you're there, download the podcasts. The podcasts are all the interviews that we do here in their entirety. All right, everybody. We got more great show to come, so we'll be right back. My next guest is Kelly Schwartz. He's an accomplished filmmaker with 6 feature films under his belt. He is also the owner and proprietor of the Indie Film Factory, located in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a great place that helps indies get their films made. So if you're thinking about making a feature film, or you're looking for a new place, some place that you can get everything done that you need to get done as a filmmaker, you definitely need to check them out after this interview. Quiet on the set! Marker. Tape rolling. Lights. Camera. Action! What do you find is the biggest misnomer that indie filmmakers have when they come into your studio about making a production?
You know, that's a great question. It's hard to almost begin to answer because there's so many misconceptions about filmmaking. And I think the number one thing for me, the biggest thing, is that, you know, people think, you know, I'm going to make a movie, I'm going to get it into Sundance, and I'm going to be richer than Croesus, and it's going to be awesome, right? And it's hopeful, it's inspiring, but what I try to tell filmmakers is that this is a long-term commitment. This is a lifestyle. It's not so much a career choice. I always advise people, and this goes for myself. I mean, I have other sources of income for this, for the small fact that, you know, the independent film industry is it's a complicated marketplace, and you're lucky sometimes to break even on your projects. So you have to have other sources of income. You have to have other drivers and vehicles, but you have to have the patience and perseverance, I think, to last. You know, I've been doing this for almost 15 years. I'm currently shooting my 6th feature film right now. We start shooting again tomorrow. We've been on a 2-week break. But I got to tell you, the only reason why I've been able to sustain myself is because I've figured out a way to pretty much allow filmmaking to fit within the lifestyle that I wanted, you know, rather than the other way around.
The studio space is a much better environment to control the audio and the backdrops and things like that. Is it easier to do it through a studio, or do you guys do on-location stuff as well? Do you guys go remote?
Well, that's interesting. So we're in the middle of our production called Domicile. It's a feature film. science fiction film. We've been on location for the last 3 weeks. We've been filming at this water reclamation treatment facility on the far east side of our valley, and the place is unbelievable. It's a multi-million-dollar production value backdrop. I mean, you couldn't find it anywhere really. We've had pretty much exclusive access since our last film, Territory 8. We have a really good relationship, and we filmed, I mean, literally 3 weeks at this location. Logistically, it is nasty. It is dirty. It is dusty. Half the crew is coughing because of all the lingering elements of chemical and dust that was in the air. We are so happy to get into the studio. We're going to be filming the next 2.5 weeks here at the Indie Film Factory. We're building a nice, comfortable set. It'll be climate controlled. It'll be sound controlled. And so there's, you know, the other thing too about sets and studios, it can get quite expensive to build, you know, legit looking sets. So I think there's a balance. You know, not everything should be filmed in a studio, but there are certain great purposes for having a studio space.
And do you guys have all the equipment and all the tools that a filmmaker would need to make a film at your location?
We do. The only thing we don't have, I would say, is like camera package rentals. And we do have cameras and stuff like that, of course, that we own. But we don't necessarily rent our cameras, but we have all the grip and the other lighting stuff that you would need in the studio.
Your services, do you have a crew that can do the crewing and or does the indie filmmaker have to supply that usually?
We actually have a great network of people that we patch people in with. In fact, a lot of the people that film in the studio, they'll contact us and they'll say, hey, we need a grip, or we need a you know, in some cases even a DP, you know, a director of photography. So we'll get people in contact. I don't have a full staff of people, but we have a network of trusted vendors that we work with, that we can connect and put packages together and things like that. The great part about it is most of the people that we work with is a very relatively small community, so everybody kind of knows of that person, he or she, and it makes it a lot easier. And then again, I offer myself as a consultant on some projects to help people put things together.
And you'll sit with the filmmaker and conceptualize and go from pre-production to production for them. You guys have a post-production facility as well?
We do. We handle all of our post-production for not only our clients, but we've done post work for other filmmakers. We've done sound work. We do a lot of motion graphics work and visual effects. Basically, build it on a package kind of basis. We don't. I mean, it's rare that a filmmaker will come in and say, "Here's the script. Can you do all this stuff?" You know, that's very rare. You know? In fact, we actually encourage. We actually advise against that, just simply because, you know, we had a filmmaker that came in here one time and wanted us to do everything. And I thought to myself, what is your goal? And he's like, well, I want to go long term. And I said, have you ever made a movie? And the answer was no. You know, I think there's some benefit in you doing some of the work yourself. I mean, we would love to take everybody's money, and that would be great. But at the end of the day, there's some benefit of them DIYing their projects themselves. I think it's very important for a filmmaker, regardless if he or she's a director, to get behind the camera and learn how to change a lens, learn how to work a different camera system. That's so important, because it's just as important as for them to learn editing. Because if you know editing, then you also know how to be more resourceful on your shot list. You don't need to shoot a ton of stuff. You know exactly what you need to get the job done, and that really counts when you're working on a shoestring budget and you don't have a lot of money to throw into a project. You got to make your day. You can't afford to go over. So the Indie Film Factory, we started about almost close to 5 years ago. My wife and I, Charisma Schwartz, she had the idea of doing a studio and a production kind of service arm of our other company, basically to help independent filmmakers. Because we were independent filmmakers, we always had a hard time finding affordable studio space. Really a place that you could go in and swing a hammer, make some mess, and build sets and do that kind of stuff. A lot of the studios in Las Vegas in particular, they're very nice. They're very nice studios. But you kind of get what you get. I mean, you can't go in there and really do much because these are corporate type environments, and they certainly don't like messes. Here we are. This is what we're here for. It's like the sandbox. So you come in and you build and do what you want to do. I'll take you on a quick tour. So this is our front lobby area. So it's a small studio. It's roughly about 1,350 square feet. And as you can see, there's some sets that are being built. We have currently a small makeshift audio booth that filmmakers use. In fact, NBC Universal records regularly here for their TV tags. They have a talent that's here in Las Vegas that comes into our studio about twice a week. And here's our green screen environment. We actually build all of our props in the studio here. We have a small little workshop in the back that we build prop set pieces and all that good stuff. And we have a little small makeup area. Right now, it's my makeshift office. I'm actually working at the studio today. I do have another office across the driveway from the studio, but sometimes it's just quieter over here because our production office, we're dealing with clients and editing, and it's kind of a noisy place.
How would you recommend filmmakers prepare if they were to come to the Indie Film Factory and film?
Work on something smaller. Work on something manageable. And by that I mean something that's not going to, number one, bankrupt you. 2, not bankrupt your family or your friends or your investors. And 3, something that you can do in a very small amount of time that can showcase and for you to cut your teeth on.
I see you have indie in your title. So here's the big question, Kelly. What does the word indie mean to you? And how would you describe somebody who is indie?
I would describe somebody as indie, and I would describe myself as this, is a hands-on DIY individual. A person who is going to be able to know and execute every aspect of the process. There's certain things that I'm not good at, obviously, like connecting on Skype. So I bumble my way through it. But I think to some extent, I have to know every other aspect about the filmmaking industry. There's people that are much more talented than me on editing and cinematography and all that good stuff, but I do know it. And I look at it this way. If my crew didn't show up to set call tomorrow, I could still pick up the camera and shoot my movie. At the end of the day, we have been successful here because we've kept our space small, we've kept ourselves as humble as we possibly can, and we've allowed ourselves to be affordable for filmmakers that want to come in and get things going. One of the main things that the studio is used for is like meetings and casting and workshops, because I say, look, don't cast a movie at your house. Don't have people. It's a liability. It's dangerous for you. It's dangerous for the people that are coming to it. And it sets a tone of somebody not being there yet, not being professional. So the Indie Film Factory is a cheap, affordable place. People know it in the community. It makes people feel comfortable. So when you do a casting call at 7 o'clock at night, they're not thinking it's some creepy thing. They feel that they know the place, and it's a little bit more of a community in that respect. One of the things that is probably the most disheartening out of the whole process is when I meet actors or crew people that say, I never received a copy of the movie that I was in. I can't even get a demo scene for my reel. And to me, if you're not paying people or people are working with you, or the least thing you can do for them is honor your commitment to getting them something that they can use. Now, if your film is stuck in post-production hell and you can't get it out of post-production, at least segment a clip or something. Take the time. They made the time and effort to show up every day for your set, to put up with it. You put them in dangerous situations, I'm sure. You put them in hot, miserable, cold situations. So the very least thing you can do for them is honor your commitment in getting them what they need. And so I have a zero tolerance level for filmmakers. Next time you need somebody to cut you a break on their rate, and you say, hey, and I'll give you copy and credit, you're like, meh, I'm not falling for that one again. I'm going to get the money and run. It makes it much more difficult for us to work as a collaborative community when you have people doing that. So if you're going to do that, make sure you honor your side of the bargain.
Wow. Thank you, Kelly Schwartz, for that great interview. The Indie Film Factory looks like an awesome place. I know that the next time I make a film, I'm definitely going to be giving Kelly a call. It looks like just a great place that fosters creativity and helps indies make their dreams come true. So if you're thinking about making a movie, or you have a movie that you're wanting to do but you don't have a place, definitely look up the Indie Film Factory. All their links will be on our website, as well as Kelly's contacts, and you can check out all his films and all that he's doing himself. All right, everybody, we got more show for you, so stick around. We'll be right back.
What makes a great video production company? It's not always about the amount of equipment you have or how fancy your studio facility is. I think it's really about your ability to listen and understand the needs of your clients. The Indie Film Factory is a studio facility and production company that is dedicated to just that, listening to our clients. We specialize in a wide range of things, everything from TV commercials, music videos, and author book videos. We also have an award-winning team of artists, editors, and videographers that can manage every type of project, regardless if it's a feature film or a television show, all the way up to a documentary or a corporate event. One of the things I'm most proud of about the Indie Film Factory is that we've grown from being just a studio facility and video production company to becoming literally a community with our clients and our customers. I think when you love what you do and you're passionate about helping other people, you can really create something that is meaningful, something that can be successful for many years to come. The Indie Film Factory, I believe, has done just that.
Before GoIndieNow took on the massive undertaking of going live for an entire weekend during the Brain to Book Cyber Convention, I needed to do a couple test runs. And one of those I did with my friend Josh Robertson. Josh Robertson is a best-selling dark fantasy author and publisher in Alaska. And we had such a great conversation that he and I both agreed that we needed to put this into an episode. So here it is.
Chat.
Evening, Joe.
Hey, Joshua, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good.
That is an excellent poster you got there in the backdrop.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I'm gonna hang it tomorrow. I got a bunch of stuff. I got a bunch of props in here. I'm about to design tomorrow, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I got this. My wife and father-in-law just built this brand new desk I'm sitting at. So I have the old one behind me, and I'm gonna kind of make it into like a little bar. I'm gonna put my Keurig and stuff in there and kind of make it look kind of backstagey. You
Very
know?
sweet.
Are you in the part of Alaska that's sunny all the time and dark all the time, half the year?
Yeah, we're working on our transition right now. We're at about 13 hours of daylight right now, 15 hours of daylight. So it's still light outside right now, actually. The sun's working on its way down. Here in about 2 more months, we'll have about 18, 19 hours of sunlight.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets to 21 hours fully by the time you hit July. And it works its way back down again, and then we get to 21 hours of darkness.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. It's quite the roller coaster. You got to really watch your physiology and take your right meds, more or less, to keep your physiology on track, or you can go a bit nuts.
Yeah, sure.
I was a therapist for 2 years, too. Worked in residential treatment for several years as a behavior specialist.
Is that what you write about?
No, I write dark fantasy.
Oh,
I incorporate a lot of things that I learned into my themes in my fantasy novels, but no, it's all dark fantasy.
oh, nice. So you're into world building then?
Yes, yeah. I really don't put a lot of it in my stories, but my worlds are very detailed.
So you're more of like the psychological portion of things?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantasy is more about building your world and making sure that you understand that this event leads to this event and this person is connected to this person.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and I don't know that I really mastered any better than any other author, but I do know that it is something that I talk about a lot. I've written lots of articles about the importance of world building in fantasy, but making sure that whatever you're including about your world motivates the character, which pushes along the plot. Don't be including histories and stories and, essentially bragging about the depth of, this place that you've built unless it pushes the story along. If it doesn't benefit the story, leave it out. And I tell you, I got gigs full of my world. You're not going to find any of it in my books. I don't talk about it in the books. It's there for my understanding as an author, not necessarily for my reader.
I get, my book is dual perspective. I wrote a detective and a mass murderer, and they're following one another basically. And each chapter I wrote, one chapter as the cop and one chapter as the murderer, and it goes back and forth throughout the entire book. And one of the things that always makes me smile is when somebody tells me that they relate more to the murderer than they do the cop, because that's kind of by design, but it's not really what I meant, but
yeah.
The reason I wrote that is because I wanted to find a different perspective, and that's what it sounds like you've done with your books, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, my stuff. It's funny, because I finished Melkorka, of course, is the first book in my series, and Dine is the second. Working on the third one right now, but if you read Dine, it changes your entire scope of what Melkorka actually said. So you have to go back and read Melkorka to see what actually happened. Because there's a lot of things in there that are double meanings. So you're reading through it and you're getting this vibe and you're thinking that this is what the characters are thinking and what they're doing. And then you read through Dine and go like, wait a second. And you go back and you find it's actually factual, but your first interpretation of the words didn't mean what you thought they meant. And I've had readers tell me that they're like, I have to go back and read the book. And they're like, that's so freaking crazy that I thought this is what was happening and it wasn't. Worked on a sociopathic story at one point. I finished it. It was just a short story, maybe about 20,000 words. And I decided I couldn't publish it. It was, it put me in such a dark, demented place. Like I'm sure that I was pretty cantankerous around folks after getting done with it, because it was all through the eyes of this, essentially a sociopath that seen the world in a very warped vision. But again, it was a lot of fun. The way that I set it up is that he's essentially cheating on his girlfriend with this other girl, and this other girl is about as warped as he is, and so you see them essentially doing all these things throughout the book, throughout the story. And you got her sneaking in and out of the shower, and when his wife's showing up home, and all these different types of things as he's trying to like distract his wife to get her out the door. And it just goes on and on and on. They're making, these sick, terrible jokes. And you get to the end of it and you realize that the whole time she's a figment of his imagination that you don't know about the story. But she's encouraging him to do things and doing things herself. And it's really a lot of fun to put together. And I had some beta readers read it. They never knew. They thought she was real through the whole thing until she realized that she wasn't even real.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
The writing portion of it is always where I've been kind of the loner and that aspect, and I do enjoy that aspect of it. And self-publishing gave me that avenue too, kind of let me be the creative and the analytical side of myself, and that's kind of cool about it. But I don't know, I don't have the discipline that I really need to be a full-time like author. I make a little bit of money, but it's not, I couldn't live on it.
I do not even make close enough to live off of. So, which is interesting. I mean, just looking at the way that things are put together. I mean, I've had one bestseller, per Amazon standards for bestsellers.
Sweet.
I got 8 books out altogether. 3 of them are full novels. Getting ready to finish up the last part of a trilogy that'll come out as a novel here in the next couple of months. Then I'll have 2 more novels out in the next year and probably 4 more short stories. So I got tons of, building backlist stuff coming along the lines, but I imagine it'll be another 2 years before I see any real payoff.
Yeah. Do you have plans to kind of shop that as film?
If I had a good filmmaker who is willing to make it into a movie, absolutely. I think with fantasy that's challenging.
Yeah, you would stay with the independent route then.
Honestly, I'm kind of open to anything. I'll tell you, if I had a call from HBO tomorrow for a television show or a movie deal from somebody, I'd eat it right up. But
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Is how I market myself a lot of ways. But I was in 2 or 3 independent films when I was younger.
Nice.
For small time indie filmmakers. They're both like vampire films, which were kind of fun to do. Did a lot of acting when I was in high school and that type of thing as well. Also ran a YouTube show for probably about a year and a half where I did a drunk cooking show. Decided that I couldn't stay with that because, if I'm a professional, you can't really find me doing that online. So I ended up taking it all off. But I like playing with film stuff too, but it's definitely not my passion. It takes so much time to cut and edit and get that timing just perfected in the filming world that, I much prefer just to sit down and write a good story.
Yeah, it's very tedious and it's very involved. And I mean, the one thing you have to have as a filmmaker is you have to have a good group of people. You can't rely on yourself. I did so after I did short films, I wrote this screenplay. Actually, I did it as a short film first, and it just kind of got way out of control. We started filming other stuff with it and realizing that I had a bigger story here. So I actually sat down and wrote the feature screenplay. And I'm from LA. I grew up in LA, so I kind of know my way around there. And I was able to go back there for a bit and kind of shop and go that route and check out how to do cattle calls and stuff like that. That was painful. This is one of the worst experiences of my life. So, doing that stuff, I don't know how anybody could. I mean, it's really grinding, and you got to be really super lucky to get anywhere and doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah, making it yourself is such a much better route. It's a lot tougher and it's a lot more work, but making yourself is the only way to ensure that it's the vision you want it to be. I mean, even if you get it sold in Hollywood, the stories of people selling a script and never having a movie made is a lot more common than people think. There's tons and tons of scripts that have been bought that nobody's ever seen.
Yeah,
so.
I've actually heard about that. Yeah, that's a sad deal. Now, I don't imagine that any of my stuff will get noticed until, I start getting more buyers and reviewers and a bigger fan base. So,
well, bestseller helps that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think I've sold 1,400 copies of Milk Orca.
Oh, nice.
And the rest of my other 2 novels, I released one in October and I just released one in January, and they're both hovering around 150, 100. So they're just slowly climbing right now.
Wow.
But,
I'm only 1,275 behind you.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. It's only been out for a year, but
yeah.
I actually found more success going to festivals than I did online and stuff. But
that's what I've heard too. Unfortunately, being in Alaska doesn't give me a lot of breath to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you do a podcast, right?
I do. Yeah, we just started the Writer's Edge podcast back last October. Yeah, or September. Yeah.
Do you do it on video as well, or do you just do it audio-wise?
We just do audio. We do have a YouTube, but the YouTube is just slides of us essentially. Author picks this slide across as we're talking.
Yeah.
And then we have Podbean as well. I haven't mastered getting it onto iTunes yet. I know there's a way to do that. I think that it's free, but I haven't actually looked into it.
It's super easy, man. Actually, it's really super easy.
I figured it was a couple clicks of a button, and that was about it.
I'll send you the link that I used to get there. It's really easy. I mean, seriously, you go to this one spot on iTunes, you put in your RS feed, and you're done.
Oh, nice.
And then it'll approve you, and once it approves you, you're on. You'll be searchable and all of that.
Oh, excellent. We will definitely do that. Yeah, I knew there's people that have been into it, but we've been hit and miss with scheduling and doing stuff anyway. I think we have maybe 8 or 9 episodes out right now.
Nice. So you do it with somebody else?
Yeah. Myself, Shannon Hawthorne, and Beth Hammond are the primary 3. We got a team of about 7 different authors, and we kind of interchange and do just little pieces on how to create your story, how to create plot, how to start your story, what editing looks like, what proofreaders do, that type of thing.
Nice.
So it's mainly set up for writers, just about the writing process and how to make your writing better.
What was the name again?
The Writer's Edge.
Writer's Edge.
Yep.
I'm writing that down. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, we've had fun doing it. We're still kind of, I think, learning the ropes. There's definitely some folks out there that are more skilled in what they do, but I'm part of.
Do you watch other podcasts and stuff?
I've seen a few, but not regularly. I'm honestly so busy because I own my own small press, and so running that keeps me very swamped. And then we have the Facebook book club that I run too, where we have like 4 or 5 posts a week. And then I'm also an admin for the Phoenix Quill, which is a writers group that has about 240 people in it or something like that. And so I'm constantly monitoring that. And then of course writing, and I work full time, and I got 5 kids, and only so much one man can do, I guess.
Is your whole family up there with you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Most of my training has been in neuroscience and the brain and trauma in children. And I've done a lot of work underneath people like Dr. Siegel and Dr. Perry that are pretty renowned in that universe. But I really like taking the positive lessons that I learn about what people seek in life and what motivates people. And I like to twist that and put it into, fantasy literature to kind of motivate people to change their beliefs and their view about the world. Instead of writing something purely clinical and, nonfiction.
Yeah. I'm sure now you can see why I wanted to include that incredible conversation I had with Josh Robertson in this episode. You can download the entire interview, in fact, all the interviews that we do on this show, as audio podcasts right from our website. You can also, if you're an iTunes subscriber, go to iTunes and subscribe to us. Just search GoIndieNow and hit subscribe. Also, leave us a rating, comment. Let us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. It's the only way that we'll get you the content that you deserve. And by going through iTunes, you'll get the podcast before anyone else, even before it's posted on the website. So definitely go and check that out and subscribe. So on the heels of our incredible undertaking of going live for an entire weekend while we covered the Brain to Book Cyber Convention, which, by the way, thank you so much to Angela B. Chrysler and the Brain to Books Cyber Convention crew for letting us be there and do all that. We had an amazing, amazing time, and there was a lot of great information shared. And this is just a sampling of that. I wanted to do a kind of a best of. Welcome officially to the 2016 Brain to Books Cyber Convention live coverage at GoIndieNow.
The 2016 Brain to Book Second Annual Cyber Convention. Seriously, this would not be possible without everybody involved. And we have, I believe, the count is up to 720 people involved. It is astounding. All I did was flick a domino, and now I got 700 people.
So this is why I'm actually so glad that I got invited to this event, because I can't do events in English-speaking stores. And things like this convention actually give me this option to let people know that I'm here.
Yeah.
So it's when I saw this in my mail, thank you, Angela. When I saw this in my mail, I jumped at the chance, and then I was reading and I was like, oh, what can I do? What can I join? And hopefully the time difference isn't too bad. So
I mentioned my book Broken to somebody, and they were really fascinated with the subject, and they were into it. And this person tacked on she's an indie author, and I'm like, Broken just was a finalist for an award. And it really, there is a derogatory.
It's a stigma. It's a stigma.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Karina. Yes, it is a stigma, and I feel like we have that. That's one of those obstacles that we are absolutely up against immediately. And
we're going to be fighting this all the time.
Yeah. I actually refrain from mentioning it because it doesn't matter how the book was published. It really doesn't matter. And a musician doesn't walk up and say, yeah, I'm an indie musician. A filmographer doesn't walk up and say, I'm an indie movie producer. They just say, I'm a movie producer.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm a writer. I'm an author. It doesn't matter how my books get to you. They're here, and I'm a huge quality and story stand on its own, and that's really all that should matter.
Yeah.
That's right. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I'm proud to be indie. Anyone asks, I'll shout it, and if they don't ask, I'll tell them. But yeah, there is a stigma, and people just don't give indie books a chance because they weren't going through an editor. That's what they're worried about. That either the person can't write or it's going to be full of mistakes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how good your book is. You're an indie author. That's it. The stigma's there, and they just don't want to know.
Ideas keep coming, so we don't even know how that happens.
That's the great thing about it, right? Is you have characters you love, and you invest so much time in them, and you really pick them up, and just you imagine so many different scenarios with them, right?
Right, and I mean, when I wrote just a single book with no plan for a sequel or anything else, I would get to the end of the story and I'd be like really sad, and I would just kind of stop writing so fast because I didn't want it to end. And so that's the great thing about having a series, is that you get to the end and you go, wait a minute, I've already got plans for what comes next, you know.
I think that's important for authors, is to find your style, how you write, because not everybody writes the same.
Readers don't understand how we work, how our mind works. So it's sort of, we're opening up here and letting them know how wacky and deranged we are. And then we all hear voices in our head, you know.
I would say if something happens to me, delete my internet browser.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You don't want to. It's not good.
I've seen that T-shirt and mug float around about, what's that saying about the writer? If you saw my internet history, don't worry about it. I'm a writer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's me. Yeah. I think in one day I looked up blood banks. I looked up how does a funeral home dispose of blood drained from a body. Looked up FBI profilers, and then I'm thinking, yeah, I'm on some watch list somewhere now.
I was a huge reader my entire life. I taught myself to read by the time I was 3. I don't ever remember a time that I wasn't reading, like a crazy person. So writing was just something that just sort of started naturally. I can't imagine myself not writing. There were other things that I wanted to do in my life over time, and all of them just kind of faded out, and it's the one constant that's always been there. If I don't write for a while, you can tell.
Stories of how people get started are amazing, and Martin is another one of those that has a pretty good origin story, and it's just, I think if you write from a fan's perspective, sometimes you can capture a lot of things that, you've wanted to say about something that you didn't like, because fandom usually comes with criticism, right? So.
Yeah. It definitely does. I just finished writing an article for Our Right Side, for their literary journal that they put out quarterly. And it was talking about that, about how fantasy, for those that really write fantasy and get into it, there's a big story to tell. And it's about telling this story that has this theme and has this lesson and teaches some sense of morality around whatever it is that's going on. And it's not just some, fantastical throwing of words on paper to just entertain you. There's really some deeper purpose behind what it is that we do.
I think the revolution in Parway already happened. I mean, you've got direct competitors now. You've got people who, like me, would probably not make it in the regular industry because of the odd mash of horses in science fiction, and that's fine. I mean, I'd rather publish it myself or publish it through a small press and be true to my heart than have some editor in New York tell me, sorry, we're cutting out half your book because it just doesn't fit our box. You know?
I know for myself, as I've been looking at this over the past couple of years, you see the changes in just folks that are indie anything coming up the ranks and really challenging those big conglomerates that are still trying to hold their foot and say that they're the experts at something. And I think there's a lot of folks that have the skill set to say, we're also experts.
I was on this on Book School Social, and there was a woman saying like, "Well, no one's reading my stuff. What should I do? No one's reading my stuff. What should I do?" And then people were like, "Don't worry, you'll find your readers. Just keep pushing at it. Don't worry." And then me and two other people said, "Give me a link to your stuff. I will read it." You know, it's not that hard to say, "Give me a link to your stuff. I will read it." I might not read it all at once, you know, but I will get to it and read it. This other person who said, "I'm not getting reviews for my book," I said, "Send me one. I'll read it. I don't care what it's on. I don't care the genre. I will read whatever you put in front of me, not because I feel I have to, not because I feel that it's going to help everybody in the world, but because it's going to sit there and go, I helped you by giving you a review and reading your book honestly, but it also made me a better person and a better writer because I read this new style that will influence me in some way. Do I know the way? No. Will it be helpful or beneficial to me? Probably not, because I probably won't write in that genre, but I will have that experience, and the person will have a better experience with indie authors and not want to give up.
Like the late show and even the wrap-up show, I feel like even if there are viewers, it reminds me of when you go to these conferences and you go to like the hospitality suite and you're just like throwing back some drinks and just like shooting the shit with like whoever's there, and like it can get a little thin, but like there's always somebody hanging out just talking.
Yeah, and then those things are all built on networking. So that's when you really want to go.
Yeah.
You know? When I used to do the conferences, like the writers' conferences and stuff like that, I never went to the classes. I went to like one. I picked one that I really wanted to go look at, and I do that, and then I go back to the hotel and nap because I knew
all the social stuff.
Yeah, all the action was going to be at the bar in the hotel. You know?
That is 100% true, even for English teacher conferences.
Yeah.
Because English teachers, right around 6 p.m., they start getting a little bit loose. They tear the suede patches off of the elbows.
I don't like to read things that I see every day. That's not what I want to do. I don't go to movies that are like that. I don't want to see that kind of stuff in my leisure time. So I don't write that. You know, I've dealt with a lot of horrible situations, and I don't want to have to read that or see that when I'm trying to relax. And so that's why I don't tend to write that. Now, having said that, one of my current projects is a harder project for me to write, and it's because it is touching on some of those things, and it's going to take me longer to write it, and I know that because I'm not quite sure I really want to do it. It's one of those sort of things. I know it's going to be really hard, but it's an interesting story.
Yeah, I said this.
I understand. I understand completely. There's this next book after Legend I don't want to write because when I wrote it, it happened before September. The idea of what it was about, or at least the action part of it, happened before September 11th. And when September 11th happened, it was like, shit, what did I do? You know, and I don't want to touch this anymore because it was, you know, planes going into buildings, and it's just like I don't want to deal with that. When I say I write realistic, I mean I write that. People having real emotions. That's what I meant by realism. I don't want to write complete what's going on in this world either. I just mean real emotions. Like I had one person tell me that I should make my big guy be perfect and not have, you know, be gentle and be, you know, just this person he wasn't. And that's what I meant. I meant real emotions to real situations, but not, you know, not writing about everyday stuff that you see on the TV. I don't know if I explained myself any better on that one.
Yeah, I can kind of.
I want some happy endings.
I'll be honest. Most of my books that you read don't have a happy ending, and I talked about this. So don't read my stuff, Corey. Not all mine usually have a happy ending, and part of it I think is because for me, when I read a book, even though yes, I like to read for enjoyment, I also like to read for something that's life changing, which I think can be done through different types of avenues. And each of us, I think, reach a different audience based on the way that we write. And who's going to be most drawn into our particular style in terms of the message that we're wanting to deliver. And messages are delivered through a variety of different ways. But for me, when I read a story, I want to be a changed person at the end of that book. When I flip that last page, I want to know that it impacted me and changed me in some way, and not necessarily be full of all sorts of fuzzies and rainbows and, that type of thing. I want to be completely moved, and I have to sit back. I want to shut that last page and have to sit back and be like, wow. I almost need to read that again to really get the full impact of everything the author was telling me through the course of this story. And that's what I want out of it. I don't think that I necessarily get that when I get a happy ending.
Indie bookstores need to learn how to sell books in the modern day and age. I went to my local indie bookstore and I was frustrated because the fantasy section was like 3 little shelves and the only books there I had read already. And I could go ask them things, but the person working there specifically said, I don't pay attention to anything but the bestseller lists because that's all that I need to know. I'm sorry. If I'm an avid reader, I know what books are on the bestseller list and I've read them already, and I don't want you to tell me to read it already. I want you to tell me, oh, if you liked this book that was on the bestseller list, then you might enjoy these other books too.
What's interesting about online, doing the conventions online or doing all these author things online is it gives people more access. I mean, but you lose the personality. You lose unless you're doing a video like this, you lose the face-to-face connections of the people. And I still think that can never be replaced. I mean, even video, you're only seeing the dimensions you're only seeing the person. You're not really hearing their breathing or hearing their, or seeing their sweat, So I think, in a way it's good that we have the online stuff to give us the access, but in a way it kind of distances people too.
Discipline. Do you have a writing discipline? Do you write a certain amount of words every day, or are you just writing when you feel like you need to write?
I'm trying to develop a writing discipline, but I'm a rebel, so as soon as I decide I'm going to do something one way, I won't do it. So nothing has stuck yet. No one set of habits or writing times or writing hours or writing words has stuck.
Really?
Yeah.
I was actually, I think it's different from me. I try to set out. I know on every day of the week I try to set out what I need to do, like errands and everything, because in order to set aside writing time, I will tell myself, okay, say if it's editing, I will edit today this and this chapter, I will read this and this chapter, or I will try to read this and this chapter, especially when I'm more into the story, when I have more of the story in my mind. But one thing I will never ever do, I will give myself those times that I need to, that when you're writing is not the actual writing of the words, but leaving the story in your mind, that's considered writing for me too. So I would say, okay, today, if I see this, I'm not managing to write a paragraph or the chapter I want to write, but I need to think it out. I'm going in a different way. I'll let myself be. But yeah, listen, guys, if we're serious about this, the way I see it, it's our work. It's not work, but it's our work, and you gotta give it the time. You gotta set out the time to do this. Otherwise, your time goes elsewhere, doesn't it? Doesn't time get wasted because you do some other things? I mean,
well,
I have a fairly disciplined approach, actually.
Okay, how do you do that?
Several years ago, I participated in National Novel Writing Month, and I discovered that I write really well in the morning. That's when I'm most productive. And so when I am actively working on a novel or a series of short stories, I write in the morning, and I set aside the time to write in the morning. The exception to that would be a Tuesday morning, because I have the Back Porch Writers show in the morning, and then I have Indie Author Hour. So Tuesdays are a little of the exception, but I typically will put out a first draft manuscript in about 23 days and get that out, and then I'll move on from there. And so right now I just finished and put out North Downing, which is the second book in my series, but I already started writing the third book, and I put it aside because then I needed to do some other work on North Downing. This is in the last couple of weeks. But typically, if I'm working on a novel, it's going to be, I'm going to sit and I'm going to get it done in the next 23 days or so. But I learned that from doing National Novel Writing Month, because I needed to get 50,000 words done in 30 days is the challenge. And so every time I've done Nano, I've tried to finish it faster and faster and get faster with my writing and get more proficient the way that I do this. And so it's super disciplined for me now. I made a decision a couple years ago that I wanted to be a full-time writer and actually make a living. And in order to do that, I need to write and put out books. And that meant I needed to write faster. And the more I write, the better I get at that skill.
Love that, Corey. That is the real the real secret to success is keep writing. When you finish a book and you get it out there, go write the next one.
It looks very structured, and I think it's like, I think you have to do that. If, like you said, Corey, if you want to be a writer who actually makes a living from writing, so won't have to do anything else that we really don't like to do, I think that's the only way to go.
You hear this from made authors who go, yeah, I'm on my 8th book and I'm now a bestseller. Yeah, the more books you have, the more credibility you're going to have. That's possibly true. Not always, depending on what kind of books you're writing. But the more you do write, the more you're going to be able to say, this is new content, this is new content, this is new content. And that is what's going to keep you fresh. Go ahead, Tim.
What I'm actually using my blog for, I actually very rarely do much advertising on my blog about my own work. What I actually use it for is the social side. And a lot of people here have probably seen that I do the author spotlights, book spotlights. I do my weekly midweek mumbles, which is basically just a random ramble or rant about whatever's going on. Sometimes it's just something I saw that I really enjoyed. But one thing that's been proven really popular is I do a Saturday morning one that goes out, and it's a poster I do. It's someone else's words, and I just pick a quote from the I saw from the week. I pick a picture, I put it together in a poster using Canva, and then I pop that out every Saturday. And I think that's one of the things I get followed for the most right now. That and the book spotlights. So it comes back to, again, not oversaturating with your own material. But the nice thing about the way I've approached it is the book spotlights, the author spotlights and everything, each of them takes me maybe 10 to 20 minutes to put together. And most of the material for it is actually provided by the authors I'm working with.
So with marketing, one of the things that I found that is most helpful is to not always be saying, buy my book. Doing things for other authors, partnering with other authors, and showcasing them is a great way to get your book in front of their audiences without having to say, buy my book. So conventions like this, I've gotten great responses. I haven't tracked my sales yet, but I have tons of new people that have signed up for my newsletters. I've got tons of new people that are joining me on Facebook and Twitter and joining all of the stuff that I've done. I've done very little at this convention that was about buying my book. It's all been about getting to talk with other authors and hanging out with them.
Name of books and arts everywhere. We thank you.
That's our show, everybody. I want to thank all my guests for coming on this month. And before I go, I just want to leave you with this. I can tell you, having faced the Hollywood machine, pushing my way through the dog piles and herding through the cattle calls, that if you're an indie, you can feel very much alone and disenfranchised very quickly. And if you do it yourself, you're also going to face an enormous amount of criticism and judgments from people who are just trying to keep you down. But I do see that environment slowly changing. And if we help one another, we can make it an even greater change and greater impact. That's what the Brain to Books Cyber Convention was really about. It was really about reaching across the way and saying, hey, look, I know what you're going through, or I have this to help you out. That's what this should all be about. You know, it's time that we all go indie now.
Let's hang on to the highest cliff, making sure we want to live. Carry my love and I'll fall for you. Just carry my love and I'll fall for you. I insist we all die, making sure we learn to fly. Carry my love and I'll fall for you. Just carry my love and I'll fall for you. Watch me cut these lines, see me fall to this kind of mind. Tumble up in the dream, take my love, come on and carry me. Yeah. Two more ropes to hold the weight, one for love and one for hate. Carry my love and I'll fall for you. Just carry my love and I'll fall for you. I insist that you learn to cry. Show me tears, then I'll show you mine. Carry my love, then I'll fall for you. Just carry my love, then I'll fall for you. Watch me. Carry my love, just carry my love, just carry my love, then I'll fall for you. Just carry my love, then I'll fall for you.